Mr. Speaker, October is Women's History Month and is also Islamic History Month. What's a better way to celebrate this than by recognizing a strong Canadian Muslim woman? Alia Hogben is an irrepressible voice for women's equality. She fiercely fights against misogyny and gender-based violence. Alia also calls out Islamophobia and all other forms of bigotry.
My name is Alia Hogben. My parents, my father, both my mother and father, are of Indian origin. My grandfather left India. Britain was ruling India, right? And so they ruled Burma and India as one country. They didn't care. And so a lot of Indians went from India to different parts of the world. And a lot of Indians went to Burma and settled there. So my grandfather went to Burma to make his fortune. My father studied law, but because they were well off enough, he went and studied in England, in Oxford, went back to Burma and practiced law. And then he became involved with both he and his brother in the independence movement against the British. And then the Japanese came to Burma and took over Burma. So everybody had to leave. So it became refugees and horrible. So my family left. There were lots of myths in every family. And the myth in I don't know if it's true or not, but we were always told we got the last boat out of Rangoon, and we left everything in Rangoon and went to India. And my mother, as I said to you earlier, opened up a home to take in all the refugees that were streaming through Burma into India and so on. So there are all those memories of people suffering. And then my father, after the Japanese left and India was getting its independence, my father decided to go back to practice in Burma. And so he got to know Nehru. Jawaharlal Nehru is one of the fighters for Indian independence. And he was from the same town. And so when my father was going back to Burma, he thought to practice law. Nehru said to him, "If you're going back, would you like to represent India in Burma?" And my father, of course, was honored and delighted. So he went back to Burma, and he was the first Indian representative of the new government of India. And so I have lots of memories of when Gandhi died, his ashes came to Burma, and my father, as the Indian representative, took the ashes and went down the river and floated down the river and so on. Then my father became the Indian ambassador. And so he stayed in Burma, and then he was posted to Japan, and then came to Canada.
Has your experience of living in numerous countries impacted your perspective as a social worker?
Oh, absolutely. I think when you live with so many different kinds of people and different countries and different cultures, you can't become a closed-in kind of person. You have to be open to all sorts of ideas and things. And one of the stories I always tell is when we were living in Japan, I became very homesick for certain things for Japanese, nothing to do with being Indian. And the same way with all the other, that's why I think Canada is so great, because there's so many cultures here, and you can give and share and take and, and not keep your focus so narrow.
Throughout your career, you've supported a diverse range of people. Why were you specifically drawn to educating people on women in Islam in the more recent years of your career?
As a social worker, I started off by working with children. I felt very badly because I felt that children were treated badly and they're vulnerable and fragile. So I worked with children a lot for 4 or 5 years, I think it was. And then from there, it became families, and from families, it became women. And I feel that if I passionately believe in the rights of everybody and the equality of everybody, then women were not treated very well, either in religious communities or even generally everywhere else. So for me, it became a real passion. And being a woman myself, I guess, it matters.
I think that's beautiful that you started working with children and then families.
I did, and I worked with people who are disabled. And anyone in need makes me feel very passionate. I don't know if we helped it, but you try. Really, it's hard to tell whether you've helped somebody you're one person out of the myriads of other people who try to help. And so you do your little bit, and then hope it does make a difference.
Can you tell us about some of the educational campaigns you ran through the Canadian Council of Muslim Women?
Because it's an organization of Muslim women, we wanted to be sure to address what Islam was or is, or how it affects women's lives. So that's opened up so many areas. So it's different countries, but also how are women treated everywhere else. And then the fact that there's so much racism and prejudice against Muslims and against, so to fight that as well. So you have to understand, you have to start with what is it about and how does it affect you, but also how do you counteract all the negativity that's out there. We did that. We said what projects. We did a project on horrible subjects like female genital mutilation. Why should it be allowed to be practiced here in Canada? We were trying to narrow it down to say we know it's happening all over the world, but we're going to focus on what is in Canada and Canadian Muslims. And so if it was happening here, not a good idea, not a good thing. So how do you fight that? The other one was there's a lot of stuff about he was an Afghani man killed all the women in his families near Ottawa, I think it is. So what was the impact and the reverberations were huge. So we had to make we did I suppose a project to fight against that, and polygamy, you name it, anything to do with women.
And these campaigns, would you run them in schools or in community organizations?
Good point. We did them in schools. We went to schools, got a contract, and in schools worked with younger people, made them understand it, told them, like you're doing here, take the leadership role and fight against it. We did it through education and had groups as to how it was. Tried to educate men, big thing, in mosques, Islamic centers, to spread all over the place.
And do you have any positive memories of running the campaigns in schools you'd like to share?
Yes, empowered young women. And said to them, you can stand up and you can say whatever you want. This is being done with you. So it's practicing through learning. Learning through practice. And that's what you're doing as well. So it's the most powerful way of setting people free and allowing them to say what they can.
Regarding your experience teaching at St. Lawrence College, were there any standout moments or conversations you had with students? Or did you have any standout moments while advocating for education on Islam and women in Kingston?
Well, I must have done reasonably well, because I was forever afterwards. Students would see me on the streets and sort of, do you remember you taught me such a? And so it was very, very flattering. Nobody came up and said I did a bad job. So teaching them about all kinds of things, was good. I also taught at one of the prisons at Joyceville. One of the big things we did in Canada, which was a great success, not, controversial, was we decided we didn't want any religious laws, any family religious laws in Canada. And that was being introduced as, why not, it's religious rights and so on. So it was an issue about how far do you allow religion to take over. Yeah, we'll take over laws, and we decided no. Although we call ourselves believing women, not religious women, because we do believe in religion, but we also believed in our own equality and our own rights, and so therefore, how do you find the balance between being religious and practicing your religion, and so on. So that was a very big thing, and we won. We fought for 3.5-4 years. It was a terrible long fight, saying we do not want religious laws here, and the government of Ontario agreed with us, but it was a hellish fight to get it, and not everybody agreed with us. They said, we were taking away people's religious rights, and we said, no, you do not put a woman's safety or her future in jeopardy by saying you can use religion. So religion should not be used to subjugate women.
The campaigns you ran, were they all in Ontario or were they across Canada?
No, well, we start with Ontario, but the laws changed across the country. But also internationally, I connected with a lot of other women's groups across the world. And that's why I went to Africa and Asia and Europe, and we went to the Middle East to speak about things, about what was happening in Canada. And yeah, no, it's all over. If you believe in the equality of women, then the battle is everywhere.
Well, even how has working with women from around the world shaped your perspective of educating people on Islam and women in Canada?
It's all linked. I mean, you know. I mean, I'm tired of the negativity and the racism directed at Islam or Muslim women. Sorry. On the other hand, I always say that one should, as a Muslim, should be able to criticize oneself or one's religion or whatever. Just now, what's happening in Afghanistan with the Taliban, how can anyone justify that? Not on religious grounds, not on cultural grounds, except the fact that it's wrong. And so I was just watching a TV program before I came out here on human rights in Islam. And how do you, if you really believe in human rights and the rights of everybody, how can you then put up with anybody saying so-and-so is subordinate or superior, one person is superior than another? But it's not just Islam. I find that, don't want to talk about other religions, I'm very careful about, but even in Judaism and Christianity, if you believe that you are chosen by God, and then that's why you are somehow special, then everybody else is not special. And I really, really find that extremely difficult.
And is there anything you think that members of the Kingston community could do to better educate themselves on Islam and women?
Yes. Talk about it. Contradict it when you hear negative things. Don't accept it. I mean, all Muslims are like this. No, they're not. And yeah, no, fight against it.
Thank you for watching Global Stories in Local Kingston.